Hey, welcome back, everyone, to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 176. I'm here with my co-facilitator, Lionel.
Hello, hello everyone. How you all doing today? How you doing today, Mike?
Good, brother, yourself.
I am well.
All right. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible, and there's a document description beneath the video. You can follow along. Try to keep up. Also, we are 2 subscribers away from 1,000. Go find 2 extra people to actually join. We can make 1,000 and open up new opportunities for the channel. So one of the things we've been kicking around on the Brain Trust probably since the inception has been about Black businesses and what impact do they have, and how can people benefit from them, and what is the trajectory of a Black business in the form of a social enterprise or social entrepreneurship. So tonight's discussion is about opportunity zones, qualified opportunity funds, and social enterprises. So basically, just as a intro to what a social enterprise is, a social enterprise is an altruistic approach to entrepreneurship business that focuses on social responsibility, leveraging resources available in that set environment, and to take their profits to reinvest or donate them to projects that can create social change. So, what social entrepreneurs are is that if they're if they're not nonprofit, they are for profit. And what happens when they are for profit is that they are a capitalist. They have a capitalist approach to solving social issues and impacting environments. So let's take, for example, in places that I mean, I talk about this on the Brain Trust all the time, but uh, there was an issue in the city where in predominantly Black neighborhoods, uh, there was trash everywhere, trash on the ground. People would just throw their chip bags and wrappers and stuff like that on the ground, and people had said, "Oh, the neighborhood's so dirty." Well, the neighborhood was dirty because there was no trash cans. So someone came up with a solution to leverage a to put trash cans in the neighborhood, but not just trash cans in the neighborhood, but um, IoT-based trash cans. Initially, they put trash barrels out there, but what happens is at the end of the day, especially in the summertime, those trash barrels get filled, but they don't get picked up because they're on a scheduled pickup from the city. So they only get picked up twice a week, but those barrels get filled every day. So the trash would overflow, and then it would just fall back onto the ground, and you had the same problem again. So someone came up with a solution to come up with a more emerging tech sort of trash can that had a Wi-Fi adapter, a solar panel, and was concealed so that the trash wouldn't fall out. And what happens is when the trash barrel fills, it's on a sensor that's connected to a Wi-Fi adapter that is powered by a solar panel, a solar panel uh, uh, um, for power. This the sensor connects to the Wi-Fi and sends out a message to the city trash to pick it up when it is full. So therefore, you get 2 trash pickups in one day, and you save on useless runarounds for your sanitation people to go pick up barrels that may not even be full. So if there's a strip on like on an avenue or a boulevard or something like that, and you have X amount of trash cans that are being full, you're not stopping at every single trash can. You're actually going to those trash cans based on their location to pick up that trash and only worry about those trash cans. So that's the sort of social impact that these sort of social enterprises have on the community. So some of the areas of concern could be poverty, healthcare, education, and infrastructure. That trash can I was talking about was a part of the infrastructure itself. So it's a mini piece of infrastructure. It's the furniture, a piece of furniture. So typically, a social enterprise is like a startup. Um, they are typically function off of the bare minimum to operate and have to support social scalability. So usually when you have a social enterprise, you're kind of coming up with ideas that are going to impact the environment, but you're coming out of your own pocket up front with the initiative.
That garbage idea sounds good because also that can cut down on, excuse me, rats, uh, rodents, uh, various sorts. These sewers getting being stopped up when it's raining because it's trash, stopping them up.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
it its effects goes deeper than just having the trash being emptied multiple times a day.
Right, right, and it attracts a lot of wild animals. We started seeing coyotes in the neighborhood too. So coyotes can smell, or yeah, coyotes can smell that food from about a mile away. Um, so you don't want those sort of wild animals crawling through your backyards and stuff like that, rummaging. So, what is the scalability of a social enterprise, and how do they scale? Because typically, your traditional corporate enterprises, um, your traditional corporate enterprises like Facebook and Google and those type of things, seem to have a always seem to have something to generate revenue for themselves. Well, social enterprises work in the opposite direction. Social enterprises are always trying to solve an immediate issue within the neighborhood or within the local area um, that is impacted. So the scalability factor is you either go wide or um, you go deep. So wide means horizontal. So wide would be scaling out, meaning that you're going cross market to expand your customer base. Um, Deep means you have vertical, right? So vertical means you're looking at going up in market or deep penetration into the market. So that's what the vertical factor is about. So when you're talking about black social enterprises, you have to look around your neighborhood and say, well, how does this really impact? And how can I really make a change in the neighborhood? And like I was saying before about the trash can, that's just one idea. But then you factor in, well, how do I take a vacant lot and how do I make better use of it? How do we how can we fractionalize that vacant lot so that we can all own it, so that we can all partake in the ownership of the land. Well, Lionel has talked about this before that you can utilize blockchain and cryptocurrencies and their tokens to actually invest into that land by fractionalizing that land on the blockchain itself, and then everybody has a piece of the land. That's one way you can socially impact the neighborhood or the place where you live.
Yeah, you can. The fractionalization will allow the people who live in that area to own that area and to
Mhm.
have a stake in a. I forgot the type of stake it is, but a social stake in seeing that area prosper and seeing that area clean. That will be more of
Mhm.
a. It will transfer from a hood to an actual um, neighborhood.
Mhm. Right, and it reduces gentrification, right? So now you can't just move those people out; they actually have a stake in the neighborhood.
Exactly, it makes it harder.
Hmm. So this is all about increasing the growth aspect from a scalability standpoint. Um, Got to leverage different areas of concern, such as parameters, such as like what the impact is. Replication. Can this model be replicated in different neighborhoods? Chicago, Baltimore, Atlanta. Um, what are the tools that you're using? Are you using blockchain? Are you using emerging technologies? Are you using 3D printing? Are you using off-the-shelf goods, right? Commercial off-the-shelf products, um, or is it customized made, right? Maybe you might have a CNC tool device that allows you to make stuff in house. What's your product portfolio? Um, what is being included to actually help your initiative grow? And is there any sort of governance over it? Is there some kind of officer or some form of liaison that is communicating between the social enterprise itself and the city ordinance or something like that? Neighborhood captains, city council, those type of things. In manpower, right? How are you compensating your employees or your stakeholders? People who are working on the project, how are you paying them? Are you paying them minimum wage or are you paying them a decent wage? Is everybody working pro bono? Those are the type of things that have to be taken into consideration. In the funding aspect, are you funding it from your own pocket? Is this a co-op? Is this being funded by external help from grants and dollars and things of that nature? So the next step would be like to look at an idea of how to transfer a working prototype, and should it be bootstrapped by the members, right? So again, how are you funding this whole entire campaign? Very few banks would actually loan money to a social enterprise, but you do have like crowdfunding and things of that nature. Um, Certain impact investors is what they call them. So impact investors actually help fund social enterprises and social entrepreneurs for their initiatives. And then you can go to angel funders, or you can go to venture capitalists. But for the most part, impact investors are the go-to. So who are some of the people that are involved in this, right? In terms of the funding aspect, the
Um,
SBA, the Small Business Association.
hey, quick question. Are you supposed to be sharing your screen?
No.
Okay, okay, just checking.
Hmm. No, I'm just kind of freestyling off the top of my head. Um, so who are some of these impact investors? Social, SBA, the Small Business Association. Um, Small Business Association considers these social enterprises as co-ops. So if it's a co-op, then they actually see co-ops as small businesses, and they do have funding for that. And then you have to figure out a way. Maybe if you look at how much a basketball court costs, a basketball court is around maybe 450 to $500,000 at best, depending on what kind of material that was used and manpower that went into that basketball court in that neighborhood. Most basketball courts uh, are underutilized in most black neighborhoods due to social media. Right, people are on their phones, they're on YouTube, there are different forms of social media, and they're not really engaging in the outside world. Well, why are we spending so much money in areas such as the basketball court when that money could be utilized for something like a social enterprise to be funded so it can solve other issues in the neighborhood? And what will we do with the black community doesn't really need more athletes, right? It needs more entrepreneurs, more emerging tech people. The amount of money that they're wasting on basketball courts and things of that nature and football fields is horrendous. So we have to understand that the funding would be there if you can make a better business case, social impact business case as to why the funds should be allocated to another cause. All right, let me share my screen now. Focus on. All right, this is Social Enterprise Alliance. They are the go-to, excuse me, about social enterprises. They have all the resources on there. Uh, just going from the top, you have the programs, mentorship, office hours, webinars, impact labs, social enterprise summits. Let me go to the impact labs. So social enterprise alliance, impact lab, social impact lab in partnership with Uncharted is a 5-day funding readiness curriculum equipping social entrepreneurs and startups with the skills they need to seek investment. This hands-on workshop provides participants with an intensive curriculum supported by world-class mentors, funders, and community of fellow entrepreneurs. Ideal for those who have an existing product and are looking to systematically scale their venture. This program, this program will leave participants with a host of tangible outcomes and skills to approach investors in a community that provides long-lasting support. So this is there's actually a cost at the bottom, but I think the cost is a part of part of any sort of investment. So it's a 5-day program. So let me get to the next one. All right. So next item on the docket is from the World Economic Forum. 5 inclusive growth initiatives advanced at World Economic Forum Sustainable Development Impact Summit. So again, more social impact discussion happening at the World Economic Forum. They're actually recognizing that this is a new business model that has to be taken advantage of for people, what they consider to be POC, people of color. But in this discussion, we're talking about Black people. All right, so social inclusion and inclusive economic development initiatives were among the efforts advanced at the World Economic Forum Sustainable Development Impact Summit 2018 in New York. Each initiative aims to make a critical intervention to place human progress at the heart of the fourth industrial revolution. We talk about fourth industrial revolution on this channel all the time. With 42% of the core skills and expected to change by 2022 across all industries, and sizable skill gaps already emerging across regions, national public-private collaborations for rapid deployment of reskilling and upskilling across current workforces have been developed under the Closing the Skills Gap project. 5 initial country pilots will be launched in the coming months, including in 4 G20 economies, which will serve as platforms of learning and contributing to the global body of knowledge on preparing people for the future of work. The project also invites global businesses to commit to educating, training, reskilling, and upskilling 10 million people by 2020. It's only a few months from now. With over 8 million already 8 million already reached, these efforts advanced SDG 4 on quality education. The summit also served as a platform for other coalitions advancing SDG 5, such as the Education Data Solutions Roundtable. Now, see, we talked about the fourth industrial revolution before, and we've always said that there's a very short window of opportunity for Black people to really get involved in this. And they're saying by 2022, with 42% of core skills expected to change by 2022. That means before the next president comes around, there's going to be some immediate changes, systematic changes that's going to happen where a lot of people are going to be left behind. They would probably never find another job again.
That's going to be hard for a lot of people to take.
Mhm. Well, we've always talked about that on here, but people always say, "Oh, that's never gonna happen. I'll always have a job." The white man can't do this to me. Ain't nobody gonna do this to me. That's that type of stuff, and they're talking about it right here at the World Economic Forum. The Closing the Gap Gender Gap Project. The closing the the Closing the Gender Gap Project fosters gender inclusive economies by creating national level public-private collaboration for promoting gender equality in the workplace, particularly in preparing for the future of jobs. The workplace gender gap is already widening, with women underrepresented in areas of the labor market expected to grow most in the coming years. Research from the World Economic Forum shows that the adequate reskilling and job transition opportunities, 95% of the most immediately at risk workers could find good quality, higher wage work in growing job families, and wage gap can close by 30% through such redeployment. These efforts could have particularly salient implications for hardwiring gender parity in the future of work. Six initial country global body of knowledge on accelerating the closure of gender gaps. Anyways, this is the World Economic Forum having the same discussion that we've been talking about. And why this is so important. So, so I just want to cover these articles before I get to the actual meat and potatoes of what we came to talk about tonight. All right, this one is from RedBull.com. Six mind-blowing social enterprise stats you need to know. The past decade has seen an explosion in the number of social enterprises, with more and more social entrepreneurs realizing that they have the skills, knowledge, and patience to make a massive difference to people in their community around the world. We're seeing social enterprises contribute to all fronts of society, providing helpful and life-changing services, employing millions of people and turning over millions of pounds, dollars, and euros. If you're thinking about starting up your own social enterprise, or you're trying to convince investors to step on board, here are some of the stats you need to know. One, social enterprises employ millions of people worldwide. The stats for social enterprises differ widely depending on what country you're in, but one thing's for sure: social enterprises give a lot back to society, and it's not just because of the work they actually do. In 2017, in the UK alone, there were more than 470,000 social enterprises, employing a staggering 1.44 million people. Extrapolate that around the world, and you'll find millions of people are being employed to benefit society, wildlife, the environment, and other causes important to everyday life. So we talk about black employment, right? How do you hire more black people? We were on. I know myself was on Mr. Researcher's hangout this morning, and we talked about this, right? Why aren't black men hiring more other black men? Well, this is how you would actually do it.
Yeah, this is interesting because when I go around my neighborhood, the neighborhoods here in Chicago, and I see simple work that could be done in terms of construction, I don't know anyone off the top of my head. I can say if I own a building and I say, well, I want to get my stairs or that sidewalk redone to my building, I don't know who to call on. I don't know
Hmm.
of a person I can ask them
Hmm.
to excuse me to say, hey, who can I call? What black man can I call? And this would what this saying to me is this would allow a place, a central location for those people to get their information out and saying, hey, I lay down concrete, I do tuck pointing, I do electrical work. I do carpentry. Carpentry.
Hmm. Number two, there's more to business than money. Working for a company is no longer simply about producing services or products, and employees and employers are becoming more aware of the impact they're having on society at large. According to Deloitte's Human Capital Trends 2018 survey, organizations are increasingly judged on the basis of their relationship with their workers, their customers, and their communities, as well as their impact on social society at large. This led to 77% of the respondents rating citizenship and social impact on it as a critical factor. Business is no longer just just about making money. And Deloitte go on to add that 86% of the millennials think that business success should be measured in terms of more than just financial performance. Three, social spirit is growing up fast. As a planet, we're becoming more increasingly aware of our social responsibility, and this is particularly apparent in the fact that well over half of all U.S. social enterprises were created in 2006 or later. It's a trend that's seen elsewhere too. More than 89% of social enterprises in India are less than 10 years old, according to Social Change Central, with more than 57% of social enterprises in Canada founded in the past 6 years. The social spirit is merely a child or teenager at best. So social enterprises are basically startups at this point, and will probably always be startups because there's always something that needs to be that needs to be impacted within the environment. And that the other one was there's more to business than money, and this is true. One of the companies that I know actually does not turn any revenue, but they do make a lot of impact in the pharmaceutical industry um, in terms of in terms of their drugs that they produce, life changing drugs. Contributing on the financial front. Millennials may be well correct that businesses need to judge on more than just their finances, but that doesn't mean social enterprises can't be profitable at the same time. See, I mentioned this before that most social enterprises that are for profit actually believe in some form of capitalism, helping poorer countries to help themselves. Looking forward, looking towards developing countries for their biggest changes, however, where social enterprises can help communities to help themselves. According to the British Council, cooperatives account for 45% of Kenya's GDP, generating more money than either public or private sectors. At the same time, social enterprises are providing employment and hope in regions that need it most, along with services and products that can help to save lives. And see, that goes back to my original point that I made at the opening was that how do you employ more Black people? Well, you create more social enterprises that work on um, the benefit of the good for the environment. So let me go on to the next piece on here. All right, this one is from the WashingtonExaminer.com. Social enterprises. Social enterprise is the solution we need right now. For all the negative and pessimistic news out there, there is a lot of good being done in the world, which can serve as a source of hope. One sector which is on the rise and working to create solutions to many of the world's greatest of our world's greatest challenges is that of social enterprises. Social enterprises are organizations that produce a good or service that affects positive change on a social issue. They have existed for nearly a century, and they have grown substantially in number over the last decade. In the United States, it is now estimated that this sector employs over 10 million people with revenues of $500 billion, and it is responsible for 3.5% of total U.S. GDP. So we talked about this before, right? How do you employ more black people? Well, social enterprises employ close to 10 million people. Well, the black community has a lot of unemployment issues. Well, this is how you're going to correct a lot of these issues, and you're still bringing in revenue at $500 billion annually, and accounting for a substantial percentage of United States gross domestic product output. Here in the United States, one great example of a social enterprise is Grameen America. The organization is dedicated to helping entrepreneurial women who live in poverty build businesses to enable financial mobility. Grameen America was founded by Muhammad Yunus, who is known as the father of microfinance. He was notably awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for founding the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. Grameen America has taken this award winning model and modified it for women who live below the federal poverty line. The group, the group provides microloans, financial training, and support to their members. Participants open free savings accounts with commercial banks and learn financial literacy. The organization has already given out 400,000 loans, which amount to over $1 billion with 99% repayment rate. Um, Again, we've covered this before, but social enterprises are actually a solution to a lot of these issues that we're talking about in the black community, right? So let me get to the next article. You have something you want to add, Lino?
Not in particular, but this is some good stuff. It does seem like it solves a lot of issues.
Absolutely. TriplePundit.com. The outlook for social enterprises in 2019 and beyond. Social enterprises are a growing force in the global economy and a fierce catalyst for social change. One third of startups globally have social good as their core mission. In the United Kingdom, the startup rate for social enterprises is three times that of mainstream small and medium-sized enterprises (SMEs). Social businesses focus on providing market-driven solutions that address a social, economic, or environmental problem. I talked about that with the trash can at the opening. One Good Thing, for example, sells high-end get uh, high-end gifts made from recycled material while empowering the livelihoods of artisans that have made them. Alterna is a nonprofit accelerator for social businesses in Guatemala, and Emergency is an online doctor, ambulance, paramedic, nurse, and hospital emergency room in 15 cities. Conversations with conversations with the founders of these companies and insights from a few others provide an outlook into the future of this space. The fact is, most social enterprises will stay small but still nimble. Despite the growth in number of social enterprises over the last few decades, like any new business, scaling is difficult. I talked about scaling earlier. Social impact management consultant Lynn Thurston believes that moving forward, the call for social the call for scaling social businesses will lessen as governments and investors acknowledge that many enterprises will simply remain small or niche. How does not scaling affect the competitiveness of the business? It means that it means the company cannot reduce the price of its products without losing revenue. Although there is notable shift in consumer mindset as they increasingly demand companies to be socially responsible, the decrease in disposable income during economic slowdowns reduces the inclination to buy social products, says Michael Cook, co-founder of One Good Thing. For example, everyone will support the idea of a fairly traded T-shirt where part of the proceeds go back to the community in which it is made. But when times are tough and there is a choice to be made between that T-shirt and one and the much cheaper mass-produced alternative, people will still opt for the quick satisfaction of a bargain, explains Cook. It means that the job of social enterprises will be to highlight the additional value in the social environmental benefit that justifies the extra cost. In emerging markets like India, scaling may not be an issue. With over a billion people facing diverse issues, India has become a hotbed for social entrepreneurship, says Sweta Mango, a co-founder and director of Emergency. With an estimated 2 million social enterprises, India has enough social economic challenges that require attention, and investors are coming forward to help scale innovation in the social sector. So this is exactly what I've been saying. If most hoods, right, and we're defining a hood by a place that's poverty-stricken, economically starved, and uh, um, politically disenfranchised, this is the perfect area for Black people to actually take advantage of what a social enterprise can actually do.
Okay. I, I'm trying to get all this information from this article in.
Hmm.
I'll have to read it a little later.
Hmm. We can expect to see socially focused businesses collaborate with governments to achieve systematic change. Now, many social entrepreneurs aren't asking anymore whether they should work with government, but rather how. If you think of solving a problem on a national level, you cannot avoid a you cannot avoid or escape public institutions as key partners, says Catherine Milligan, director and head of Schwab Foundation for Social Entrepreneurship. India, with its various issues and with the population not confident in the political leadership, is now relying on businesses to solve key issues. So I think the role of social enterprises in India will become more important over time. The impact and access to big data. A new report by Deloitte on the rise of social enterprise discusses how technological advances in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data will present new opportunities for businesses to have positive impact on society. This technology is fundamentally changing how work gets done and who does it and how it influences society and will open up new opportunities for businesses to have positive impact on society. So what they're talking about is leveraging social media platforms like Facebook and Google Maps and all the data that gets collected to create this sort of to create a sort of overview of areas that are impacted, how you can address these hot spots and um, places in need, and who's the demographics of this area. It's actually interesting that they bring this up because you can actually utilize data science to get better accuracy in to what your social enterprises are focusing on. So let me get to the next one right here. Let's get to the next one. All right, this one is from blacktobusiness.com. 31 black men who are changing the face of entrepreneurship. 31 black men who are changing the face of entrepreneurship, black to business. This is this example of all the men that involved in this. Anthony Kalani. Anthony Kalani, founder of ShowKit, is an innovative tech evangelist and forward-thinking entrepreneur. His mobile application enables companies to build support services for customer service in real time, enhance your venture's level of problem solving and customer service with ShowKit. Interesting that they call this man crush. Akil McLeod. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it. Akil, co-founder of the Dapper Advisor, decided to shift the paradigm and develop his own personal style. His resourcefulness and creative intuition has allowed him to develop the Dapper Advisor. Akil's platform is the leading destination for original men's style and content. Find out how you can elevate your personal style by visiting Dapper Advisor. He's like a Kevin Samuels in digital form. Basically, he has an app used for talking about image. Fola Lawson. Fola Lawson, co-founder of Southern Gents, took his passion for fashion to the next level by filling a gap in the menswear industry. His innovative creativity has allowed him to turn his blog into a highly profitable online store. Southern Gents provides contemporary accessories, inspiring events, and enlightening resources. Boost your self-confidence and get suited for success by visiting Southern Gents. Interesting. Henry Odoa, founder of Men Afrique magazine, is the creative mastermind behind the numerous moving photos. His unmatched versatility has led him to master the realms of editorial, Afrocentric, vintage, and fashion photography. Harry's artistic passion and entrepreneurial spirit have touched our ever evolving generation. Customize your strategic solution by visiting Harry Odoa. Michelle Clark. Michelle Clark, founder of Artistic Manifesto, has poured his passion into music into the pages of his highly successful blog. His carefully curated platform highlights the best music through informative interviews, through thought-provoking articles, and must-attend events. Get your daily dose of the latest eclectic hip hop by visiting Artistic Manifesto. I mean, if we didn't cover this, you would never know this many black men were doing things like this.
No,
I'm not
no.
going to read all. Yeah, I'm not going to read all of them because we don't have a whole lot of time because it's 31 of them. But it's definitely some dope stuff that they're doing. If you have not checked it out, you should actually check it out. Maybe one of these days, the Black Brain Trust will end up on one of these pages.
Possibly. Possibly.
All right, let me just run down these items real quick. All right, this one is from fastcompany.com. This startup lets African farmers hire an on-demand tractor to boost their harvest. Small farmers in rural Nigeria typically can't afford tractors, but a quickly expanding Uber-like program makes it possible for farmers to get temporary access to tractors on demand. Over the next 5 years, through a public-private partnership, John Deere plans to deploy 10,000 tractors in Nigeria, selling them to contractors who then rent them out to small farmers using the platform from a company called Hello Tractor. Farmers can request a tractor via text message to an agent who aggregates requests. A tech platform pairs available tractors with jobs and then tracks each piece of equipment as it is used. It makes it much more. It makes it much easier for small farmers to find a a contractor in the area and schedule the service. And it makes it much easier for the contractor to aggregate his business so that he can do it in the most efficient way, says Jason Brantley, managing director in sub-Saharan Africa for John Deere. With a tractor, a field that might take 40 days to prepare for planting by hand can be propped up in 8 hours or can be prepped in 8 hours. It's also cheaper to rent a tractor than to hire farm workers. It seems counterintuitive in these markets with relatively low cost of labor, but paying a human being to do this is still much more expensive than a tractor, says Jahil Oliver, founder of Hello Tractor. Labor is also increasingly hard to find as more Nigerians move to cities and existing farmers get older. Using a tractor can help farmers plant fields in time for rain because planting with a tractor is also more consistent than planting by hand. It can also improve yields. It's not unusual to see quadruple or more increase in yield on the same parcel of land if you apply mechanized practices and modern seeds to it. When Oliver, an American former investor, banker turned social entrepreneur, first launched Hello Tractor in 2014, the company initially planned to manufacture low cost tractors itself, but it plans to sell just the technology that can be added to other tractors like John Deere's. Over the last few years, it has added its technology to more than 1,000 tractors. John Deere's work will dramatically scale that up. Using tech integrated from partners like IoT companies Aris and CalAmp, the platform can tell when the tractor is turned on and how far it travels. Because it's possible to track usage, it was easier for John Deere to work with banks to put together low cost loans for entrepreneurs buying the tractors. See, this is the type of stuff that I'm talking about. Who knew that you would have a Uber or Lyft for farm equipment?
That's a good idea. I remember we went over no, it was a documentary a couple of weeks ago about IoT devices in Germany, and they're using it there. And there was a guy on there that rented out his tractor. Um, and the articles said you can quadruple your output just by applying technical farming skills. So these people do stand that to benefit from this.
Hmm. Hello Tractor, which is also working in Kenya, Mozambique, Senegal, Tanzania, and Bangladesh, hopes to work with John Deere and other manufacturers to scale up in the other countries. We develop a track record, albeit a short track record, and we're seeing more investors move to the market, says Oliver. So we want to amplify that across Africa and Asia. Good for these guys, this is the part of the social entrepreneurship that we've been talking about all night, which is why I wanted to have this hangout. All right, this next one is from Fast Company again. This Uber-like app wants to make African minibus taxis better. If you live in Johannesburg, South Africa, commuting to work often means waking up early to wait on the side of the road for a minibus taxi that might or might not arrive. And that might not have room for another passenger even if it does show up. If you manage to get inside, the driver may drive so fast on the stretch for other riders that that vehicle could crash. A new Uber-like app called After Robot, After is used locally to tell drivers that you want to get off a minibus. Aims to reshape the experience. Using the app, commuters can make a pickup request and know when and where they'll get a ride. Drivers know where to go, and because their routes are clear, they can drive less frantically. Taxi owners taxi owners can more efficiently dispatch drivers. In the past, because there was no way to track drivers, routes were often duplicated. At the end of the at the end of a ride, commuters can use the app to give feedback for the first time. Obi Marapelli, a co-founder of Sourtech, the startup behind the app, says that he was inspired by a question. Why is it that a system that transports 70% of the public transport market can be so informal and structured, be a vital lifeline and yet so unsafe, be disliked and yet needed, but can't get real investment, all at the same time? The industry emerged in the 1980s when taxi operators first began using minibuses that could carry around 15 passengers, unlike other transportation. The minibus taxis were cheap, ran late at night and to distant locations, and didn't have long lines at stops. They became quick. They be, they became they quickly became popular, but the minibuses are often dangerous, either because they are poorly maintained or because of reckless driving by drivers whose income depends on picking up as many passengers as possible. By one estimate, there are around 70,000 minibus crashes every year, or twice as many as with other kinds of passenger vehicles. The unreliability of current minibuses poses other safety issues, especially for women when passengers have to wait outside in the dangerous areas. What we want to offer that customer is the safety and commitment of you have a ride. This car will arrive for you in 20 minutes, so you can safely wait inside and not go outside and walk around for half an hour, says Kyle Moss, an impact investment program manager for Qualcomm, which invested in the startup to help bring the app to life. See, this is more of what I've been saying before. What we've been talking about before is that they're basically creating an Uber for their own environment. And as the gentleman just said, that it actually protects women because women don't have to wait outside, in dangerous areas. They know when their vehicle's coming to pick them up. More social impact, more social justice. So
I don't know. Those things had a many crashes per year.
yeah, they have the same thing in Barbados and the Caribbean. So you have these vehicles, these what they call minibuses that are actually don't really get maintained. They just kind of drive the crap out of them until they stop working. And plus, they don't have like airbags, so you get into an accident, you're kind of bouncing around like a ping pong ball. All right, let me get to the next one. All right, this next one's from FastCompany.com again. This solar-powered cart is designed to change the African water delivery business. Let's get a good look at the cart. Jose Paris used to design cars for a living. His next vehicle, though, is different. It doesn't have a steering wheel or brakes or doors. And instead of carrying people, its sole purpose is to carry water, powered by a canopy of solar panels. The design, called Water, aims at reducing the time that women and children spend collecting water in places like rural Africa. On average, a trip to get water in a developing country requires walking more than 3 miles round trip. carrying a jug of water, carrying a jug that weighs around 40 pounds on the way back. In areas affected by drought, the walk can be 15 miles or more. The simple new cart, still in development, will likely carry a dozen 20-liter containers of water at a time as an entrepreneur walks next to it. Solar power, not human power, will propel it forward. Instead of an engine, it uses a 150-watt electric bike motor controlled with a simple throttle and tiller. When the entrepreneur stops in a village or city to sell the water, the cart can also double as a charging station for mobile phones and small electronics. That is fucking genius. The minimal design is cheap to produce. I've always been interested in frugal innovation, Paris says. He first began thinking about the concept nearly a decade ago, but at the time, solar panels much more expensive much more expensive. Those costs have dropped dramatically, and 3D printing has made some other parts inexpensive to produce as well. The simplicity of the structure is also key to the low cost. The bike is designed only to travel at walking speed in relatively flat areas, so it needs less power. The electric bike motor will run, Paris says, as long as the sun is shining, because the target market is in areas near the equator. There is an ample sun most of the year. It doesn't have batteries and doesn't run at night, but people typically don't gather water at night for security reasons. This is exactly the type of stuff that we talking about the whole entire time. I've talked about this with Complex, and you know these are areas that we could actually be focusing on, and it does double duty, right? It charges phones and other electronic tablets and gizmos, right? To me, it's a win-win situation.
That's pretty cool. It
Yeah, go ahead.
it's pretty cool. It eases the burden and the strenuous labor of just gathering water. It takes that, and now you are looking at a multifaceted way of gathering water.
Hmm. I mean, that could easily turn into something completely different, with more innovation behind it. But this is stuff that we've talked about this type of stuff offline. I find it interesting. We just got a thumbs down. We talk about this stuff offline, but these are the sort of social enterprises and initiatives that need to be focused on. All right, the next one is from Fast Company again. Malaria tests, mini tractors, solar air conditioning, 10 innovative African startups. Goodwin Benson first got the idea of Tutoria, a peer-to-peer learning platform in Nigeria, when he tutored a couple of kids near where he lives in Lagos. He taught math for 3 months and realized there was pent-up demand for one-on-one learning in the city. The parent who hired him never paid his bill, but before finding Benson, he had looked for a tutor for 2 months, and other parents were doing the same. Now 26, Benson has since signed up about 6,000 tutors to his platform, which helps match students with extra help they might be looking for. Math is the most popular subject, but you can also find tutors for languages, exam prep, and plenty of non-academic subjects like cooking and sewing. see if I can find the others. Okay, what is this? I'm not sure what happened to the article. Everything seems to have dropped off from it. So, all right, this one is from fastcompany.com again. How to power 10 million off-grid African homes in 10 years. This piece of this piece is part of Change Generation, our series on inspiring young entrepreneurs. The sentiment echoes General George S. Patton's famous words: "A good plan implemented today is better than a perfect plan implemented tomorrow," and functions as a rallying cry for follow through. But just as important is recognizing when your good plan isn't good enough, and finding the resolve to change it on the fly. That's what Erica Mackey and Off Grid Electric learn in their effort to deliver clean energy to the world's poor. With a cue from the mobile phone industry, like the Tanzania-based company has transformed yesterday's good plan into tomorrow's best hope for clean, affordable energy in off-grid Africa. They are implementing it today. The poorest people pay the poorest people pay the most money. That's grammatically wrong. Pay the most money for the dirtiest power, says Mackey, the 30-year-old COO. And these people are technically the most risk averse because anything they lose is a huge hit to them. What we do is centralize that risk. And that allows us to serve as the people the national grid doesn't find profitable. Here's how it works. Rather than relying on selling gadgets, which can become outdated and which typically cost more than the average rural Tanzanian could afford, off-grid electric sells prepaid solar-powered electric services to people in rural areas, powered from what they call Empower hubs. These are these are people who would otherwise be using kerosene lamps for lighting and backup generators to charge cell phones. Whereas it could cost between $600 to $800 for someone to connect to the national grid, the most basic OGE plan costs $6 to install and $1.25 a week for two lights and a cell phone charger. Prices increase based on the type of service a user wants: television, additional lighting, radio, etc. But because the user never owns any of the products, costs stay low, and the user doesn't need to become an expert in solar repair. Incorporated in 2011, Off Grid Electric is the brainchild of founders Xavier Helgeson, Joshua Pierce, and Mackey. Mackey met Helgeson at Oxford's Said Business School, where each was attending on a Skull Fellowship. Helgeson and Pierce met through their wives. Together, the three founders developed an award-winning project to retrofit Tanzania's off-grid cell phone towers as solar charging hubs, and then disperse the energy to nearby communities. That is genius. Yeah, that's pretty dope. Let me just let this little video play. Now, Lionel and myself had talked about this on the Hangout before about creating mini grids. This is a part of the infrastructure development from a social enterprise standpoint, and how you would leverage blockchain and crypto tokens and crypto coins for that matter, or I should say cryptocurrencies for that matter, in leveraging rewards for people who do engage in this sort of clean energy development.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember speaking about that.
Hmm. But that's where it starts, right? When we talk about infrastructure development, people think that we're talking about you know um, creating these monstrous hydroelectric dams. No, we're talking about leveraging the existing infrastructure as it stands and actually utilizing portable infrastructure. We're not talking about reinventing the wheel here. We're talking about sustainable solutions for impacting environments. So to me, this is absolutely genius. I can't wait to get to Africa. All right, this next one is Fast Company again. The journey of an African social entrepreneur from startup to success story. Almost 4 years ago, we showed you a series tracking the paths of social entrepreneurs from around the world as they took part in the Unreasonable Institute, an accelerator for social enterprises in Boulder, Colorado. One of those entrepreneurs was Moses Sanga, whose company EcoFuel Africa makes carbon neutral charcoal from bio waste in Uganda. I think we covered this before. 4 years later, the folks at Unreasonable have revisited Sanga to see how he and his company are doing. 4 years ago, he didn't have even a business plan. Today, his company is thriving. You can watch the video below and be inspired by how Sanga uh, has come. So we talk about this sort of eco fuel where they take the waste um, from humans inside of a inside of a porta potty and basically manufacture that waste with other material to create sort of a charcoal that can be burned for X amount of hours to create energy, create electricity. So
Yeah, I think that was the one from Bill Gates, right?
not necessarily Bill Gates. It was the Bill Gates toilet was something different, but this other toilet was put inside refugee camps where they needed to create a porta potty. And what they did with that porta potty is they took the waste from the people. They had somebody come by with a sanitation worker come by with a bag or something like that and collect the waste and put it into a and collect all of it and go back to this manufacturing facility, and then they poured the waste into this container and added some kind of other filler to it. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it basically created these hard uh, 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 Brillo pad sized pieces of charcoal or alternatives to charcoal. A piece of charcoal is like $6. This one um, bio waste based alternative cost $1 or less than $1. So it was much more affordable and burned just as long as the charcoal did. So I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it's definitely a dope solution to a problem like that. Richard uh, Victor, that's what I'd be saying. That's what I'd be saying. I tell people we can create our own communities on the continent, and so many don't understand the technology we have is way easier now. Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that. I definitely don't disagree with you on that. One of these days, Victor, BAIO and the Brain Trust has to do a hangout together so we can chop it up. That's something that you can do on your behalf. You can connect your people to my people, so or all of us. So, all right, this next one is from FastCompany.com. This startup pays African students to learn how to code. Most 20 somethings in Nairobi are underemployed, and most also can't afford to pay for college to get better jobs. On a trip to the Kenyan capital to give a talk about the future of education, EdTech pioneer Jeremy Johnson was asked a difficult question. How is it possible to scale high quality education if people can't pay for tuition? At the time, Johnson was running a startup called 2U, a platform that partners with universities to offer online degrees. Sounds like EDX. But after leaving the conference, he couldn't stop thinking about the challenge of providing education in Africa and had a spark of inspiration that eventually led him to quit his job to start something new. What if instead of charging tuition like traditional education system, you were instead pay people to learn? He asked. Indela, the new company Johnson co-founded, links education to skills gap software development and uses the students' own work to fund their learning. There are certain skills, in particular in the digital economy, that are inherently incredibly valuable right now, he says. The skills gap is massive. There are 4 jobs for every software developer in the US right now and 14,000 open IT jobs. The new program takes advantage of that demand to fund learning. Students spend 6 months in an online coding boot camp and then start using their new skills to work for clients overseas. U.S. companies pay Indela about half of what they might pay a typical developer, but that's enough for the program to give students a middle class wage as they learn and to fund new students as they get up to speed. Over the over the 4 year program, students shift back and forth between real world experience and more education. Indela invests about $10,000 in each student. One of the key insights here was realizing that the best engineering schools in the world, the ones the companies want to hire from, require people to have industry experience. So you can go back and forth from internship to academia. Johnson says. What we've done is replicate that model to create a modern guild. Essentially, for software developers, in some ways, it's a new thing. We're creating a system of education that finds itself through the work of our students are doing. But in some ways, it actually looks like an apprentice model from the guilds in middle age. This is it's interesting they don't do things like this in the United States, but they seem to want to do it in Africa. Not that I have a problem with it, but I just find that to be very interesting. All right, I want to get to this next one right here because I think this is kind of the meat and potatoes of this hangout. Ronnie Holmes asked in the chat, Mike and Lionel, have you all considered a blog if you don't already have one? That's coming. Stay tuned. WhiteHouse.gov. Executive order on establishing the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council. Establishing the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1, purpose. 52 million Americans live in economically distressed communities. Despite the growing national economy, these communities are plagued by high poverty levels, failing schools, and scarcity of jobs. In December 2017, I signed into law a bill originally introduced as the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which established a historic new federal tax incentive that promotes long-term equity investments in low-income communities designated as qualified opportunity zones by the governors of states or territories. In order to further facilitate such investment, my administration will implement reforms that streamline existing regulations, protect taxpayers by optimizing use of federal resources, stimulate economic opportunity and mobility, encourage entrepreneurship, expand quality educational opportunities, develop and rehabilitate quality housing stock, promote workforce development, and promote safety and prevent crime in urban and economically distressed communities. This order establishes a White House council to carry out my administration's plan to encourage public and private investment in urban and economically distressed areas, including qualified opportunity zones. The council shall lead joint efforts across the executive departments and agencies to engage with state, local, and tribal governments to find ways to better use public funds to revitalize urban and economically distressed communities. Section 2, establishment. There is established a White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council. The council shall be chaired by Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, and or the Secretary's designee. The assistant to the President for Domestic Policy or the designee, the assistant to the President for Domestic Policy shall serve as Vice Chair of the Council. Secretary of Treasury, the Attorney General, the Secretary of Interior, Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Labor. There's a lot of people on the council. I'll just say that. Basically, as I read it earlier, the Trump administration came up with a bipartisan deal on what we call opportunity zones. And what opportunity zones are like free trade zones, where things, areas that are blighted, actually get support from a tax-free, actually get investment from the federal government to aid these areas as free trade zones where there's no taxation on these areas at all. They're actually tax exempt. So, places like Chicago, places like Baltimore, especially, I think Baltimore is like the first area they covered. Those areas get revitalized, businesses get funded, and most of these areas that we're talking about are actually black areas. They're not actually non-black areas. They're not white areas. They're actually black. If you look at the map, let me see if I can pull up the map. All right, this is the map right here. The Opportunity 360 team created Opportunity Zone Explorer below to help those interested in Opportunity Zones to determine which tracks in their state or region have been designated and how they relate to other federal programs and designations. In addition, users can filter tracks using the Opportunity 360 outcome indices to see how people living in these tracks are faring across our five outcome dimensions and explore tracks that were eligible but not designated by the states as opportunity zones. So the orange represents um, opportunity zones um, as designated by the federal government. Now let me see if I can just zoom into this.
It's a lot on the West Coast.
Yeah, I find that to be interesting too. Let me see if I can pull
San
up.
Juan, Puerto Rico. No, not San Juan, but
Yeah, Puerto Rico.
its entire.
Because Puerto Rico got hit by the hurricane, right? And it's been devastated ever since, right? Never really got any assistance. So let me see if I can pull up Illinois. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I can zoom into this. Okay, so we can. I guess these are listed by counties.
Yeah, it looked like it.
Doesn't Yeah, it doesn't necessarily say which county it is, though. I don't know Chicago that well. This
Oh,
is Springfield.
Cook. It's up north,
Or
Cook
Cook is up
County.
north.
Yeah, better just go to
Okay.
the lake, all the way up to the lake.
All right. Let me zoom out.
Yeah, yeah, it's just about a lot of the South Side.
Let me see what is this saying here. Designated Opportunity Zone, Cook County. Federal program overlap. No, no, no. Qualified census tract. What happened? Yes. Federally assisted housing units. 212. Opportunity 360 outcome scores. Education 21. Mobility 6. Housing stability 82. Health and wellness being 16. Economic security 2. I personally don't know what exactly they're grading on this. Okay, here's a scorecard here. This is a scorecard. So health was 16. Um, economic mobility. Yeah, this is interesting. This is something that I have to kind of revisit
Hmm.
um, because there's a whole lot of things that go into opportunity zones and what gets classified. Um, it doesn't seem like they've done a whole lot here. or maybe this map hasn't been updated. I don't know.
Yeah, a
Let me
lot of
look.
that section is South Side Chicago.
Economic security is rated as a 3. Yeah, this is something that I definitely want to drill back down on because I just wanted to have an overview tonight of what an opportunity zone was and how it actually impacts a lot of what we're talking about on the Black Brain Trust, as well as social enterprises, because social entrepreneurship is the rising um, venture in on the world stage. The World Economic Forum has talked about this, and many other publications have that we've read tonight have talked about this. So, actually, let me look at L.A. I want to know why what the West Coast was so lit up. Don Cordito, what's going on, man? Yeah, this map isn't working. All right, let me get to the final thing on the docket. All right, this one is from entrepreneur.com. Here is why social entrepreneurs are silent revolutionaries. Profit generation is not the sole objective of social entrepreneurs. Let's explore the subject a little bit more. Often, large-scale social problems such as poverty, energy, waste, water, education, health, and jobs are the responsibility of the state. However, these problems are complex in nature and need the innovativeness and agility that an enterprise can bring to the table for it to be solved. State institutions lack typical characteristics that entrepreneurs have. Greater, greater focus on outcomes and ability to explore various models to solve complex problems. That is where social entrepreneurs come in. A social enterprise is a business first, but has an equal interest in the social impact of their business as opposed to only generating revenues and profits or to only solving a social problem. However, that this does not mean that a social enterprise is not for profit. The social entrepreneur's business model is sustained through profit generation like any other business. The difference is that profit generation is not the sole objective of these businesses. It's the overall social impact created by those products and services of the businesses. I talked about all this in the opening of the hangout. So today, Asia is home to a large number of social entrepreneurs. These social enterprises often have innovative solutions to the age-old social problems, using new technology or engaging the community in innovative and exciting new ways. Because of this, social entrepreneurs are often seen to be silent revolutionaries, the harbingers of change. Very often, their objective is to change people, customer behavior, encouraging increased social societal participation, especially from the heritable economically marginalized communities. Let's take an example: ensuring employment in villages through ecotourism, making handlooms and handcrafts popular. The main objective of the enterprises in the sector is to generate jobs locally and stem migration while preserving local heritage. The way to do this is to draw the average tourist to places which they would hitherto not considered accessible or fashionable. For this enterprise would need to for this the enterprise would need to compete with the hotels and attractions that popular tourist destinations provide. The enterprises will fail if it does not adhere to the fundamental principles of business: average occupancy, regular footfalls, and focus on operating margins. It has been observed that social enterprises are also inherently different from other traditional businesses in the ways which they attract talent. While the founders often have a highly ethical and moral worldview, this genre of of enterprises are also seen as very practical and down to earth. Idealism is often ineffective when dealing with social issues that need an eye for detail and process innovation. In addition to this, employees of such social enterprises must also be exceedingly goal oriented and must possess clear metrics in order to execute the objectives and goals defined by these social enterprises. So they can attract youth or mid career seasoned professionals looking to create a comfortable and stable career. So I've kind of I covered a lot of this stuff early in the hangout, but I just wanted to put more emphasis behind it. Um, Social entrepreneurs are the silent revolutionaries. You know, I think that fits in key with some of the stuff that we talk about on the Black Brain Trust because um, we are an intellectual co-op. What we do here is we disseminate information that typically most Black people who may not have the time to even engage in this sort of reading or sort of literature um, could actually walk into a place with online where people who look just like them and talk just like them could actually feed them information from a layman's point of view and can walk away and say, okay, I learned something new. That's what we do here. We are not for profit. We do not have a super chat button enabled. We do not have a Patreon or Streamlabs or anything like that. We do this out of our own pocket. A lot of the stuff that we're doing here is very time consuming. So articles that we're reading, we have a short list of articles that go onto a docket, like you see in the description beneath the video, and we decide out of maybe 50, 60 articles that we probably have been submitting throughout the week, what's going to go on a docket and what's not going to go on a docket, and then we kind of break down what it is. Um, or give our opinion on what it is that the article is focusing on. So that's our contribution from a from a community standpoint. If you had to go to somewhere like Stratford or the what's the other institute? Some of these other institutions, they charge thousands of dollars to get this type of information. They're not going to talk to you for free. We do this for free. So this is our contribution back to the community away from all of the BS that's happening on YouTube in the manosphere, so to speak. Um, people just talking about nothing that's going to contribute to your everyday lives. I think that this is something that has to be talked about.
It is time consuming. I tell you that much. Like when I send emails out and I give a synopsis of what the email is, well, not the email, but the article I'm sending out in the email, and then I
Mhm.
connect it to other articles that I've sent out previously or connect it to other information to paint a more broad picture. It takes at least 10 minutes to write that to write that synopsis. And I'm reading other articles and I have them lined up. I sent out a couple a day. It takes time to write all that. And I agree with you. These places such as Strasbourg, the Wall Street Journal, um, the Zero Hedge, if we were the type of information, if we were to put out what we go through on the live show and what we send out through emails with not just the articles, but a synopsis of what it is and how that ties into whatever it ties into. That's paid. That's paid content.
Hmm. Truth is, I know it. If you want to get on the panel, please get on the panel. I just dropped a link in the chat for you. Yeah. So I've been sitting on this for a minute. I've been having this docket for quite some time, and so I just wanted to make sure that we had the right time to actually produce it because we have quite a few things lined up that I didn't want to trip all over it with with this hangout in particular.
e- Especially a Julian Assange impromptu hangout. That
Hmm.
could have been paid content by itself because A, people mix him up with Edward Snowden. B, they don't know where he was held up at. C, why he held up. D, why is it important that he was held up. E, that you can go through half the list of the alphabet until you get to why it's important and why this his being jailed, how that reverberates through different realms of human life. And that itself could have been paid content because that is connecting dots. That's letting people know why it's important to you in your everyday life. What can be at what's the word I'm looking for? What things can be um I can't remember my words tonight. At stake, things like that.
Hmm. Yeah, the reason why again why I sat on this docket is because I think this is very important. We early in this hangout we talked about Lionel and myself were on Mr. Research's panel this morning, and he asked a interesting question about, well, how do black men hire other black men? Well, social enterprise is the exact way how you're going to do it. Social enterprises hires or employs millions of people across this country every year and has considerable amount of revenue um, in reference to the GDP, the gross domestic product of this country. So when black people talk about starting businesses and fixing the black community, I don't see many people having this discussion. So this is the trajectory of where we need to be focusing our efforts in terms of social enterprises. I talked about earlier in the hangout, just to recap at the top of the hour or at the top of the hangout, how a social enterprise works to benefit the best interest of the community while still making profit. You had a neighborhood that was filled with trash on the ground because there were no trash cans. The city never put any trash cans out there. So when the city did put their trash cans out there, uh, these trash cans were overfilled within a day, especially in the summertime. Trash would fall out and it wouldn't be picked up for days at a time. Someone came up with a solution of a automated trash can that has a sensor, a weight sensor that knows how much trash is weight is in the barrel and connected to a solar panel and has a Wi-Fi adapter, which turns the whole entire trash can into a IoT device. This device communicates out that um, it's at weight capacity to the sanitation workers. Sanitation workers come out that very day and pick up the trash, change and along the routes that it's mapped out for. It's on a heat map. I think they might have been using like Google Maps or maybe Bing for that matter. But but in any the point that I'm making here is that this was actually developed within the community itself. This takes innovation, right? And you're still making a profit off it.
I I was coming home from the VA one day, and the VA I go to has a transportation service, and the driver, black female, who was talking. We was going through the neighborhoods, and she said something that really irritated me because I hear a lot of black people say this, and on the south side of Chicago in the black areas, some of the neighborhoods are at least 70, 80, 90% black. And that's not an exaggeration. There are some of these neighborhoods like 98% black. So, and it's a lot of neighborhoods. It's a good stretch of land. And she was saying that how there needs to be other people, like non-black people, need to move in order to have better neighborhood. And I didn't. It irritated me, highly irritated me. And I said, so you're saying that black people are not capable of fixing up their own neighborhoods? And she said, no, it just needs to be non-black people here to have better looking neighborhoods. And I'm saying to her, I'm trying to break it down to her at a very low level. Why would you give up your infrastructure? Because when other people move in to your neighborhood, air quotes there, they're not going to hire you or say, oh, this is our neighborhood now. We must do this benevolent work. No, they're going to kick you out. And now you're not going to have anywhere to go. You're going to be pushed further and further back because good part of Southside Chicago is all black. The schools I went to were 95% black. The only non-black people there were the school, were the teachers, that were the principals. So all that is infrastructure. You have buildings, homes, roads, commercial buildings, all that infrastructure. So you have the infrastructure. The only thing you need is the intellectual capacity, the complex conversations to then utilize that infrastructure to its full capacity. And I was trying to tell it to her, but I don't think I'm not. You can say it proper than me, more PC than me, but I, it irritates me when black people say that.
Well, I think there's a perception that in order to have a better environment, it has to be more diverse, right? That white people kind of bring in money into certain places. This is true to a certain extent, but that's because there's been a wealth gap for so long that they can, they have this sort of economic resiliency um, within their social circles, right? We as black people, we don't have that. But the reason why we're having this hangout is because there's a way to create um, social justice through social enterprises and partnering with federal, your local, state, and federal governments to get this sort of funding. That's where opportunity zones come in. That's where social entrepreneurship comes in. That's when crowdfunding comes in, right? Sweat equity is key here. One of the things that the esteemed complex design, he talks about microtransportation all the time. That's the business that he's in. He sees the necessity for it. Most black people or most black areas or areas impacted by poverty could use micro transportation to get from point A to point B. You'd be very surprised how many people would love to not wait for a bus in the freezing cold, or not in the freezing cold, but just for a bus in general, and would rather have some form of personal transportation for themselves that's not going to put them into debt, and it's only going to cost them a few bucks on the day. How many kids who when we used, I shouldn't say when we were growing up, but there used to be a paperboy route for baby boomers. Not so much for Gen X's, but for baby boomers, there was a paperboy route. Well, the new paperboy route would be um your Uber Eats. But imagine something like that on a micro transportation platform for young black boys who otherwise did not have any opportunities available to them.
I was one of those kids who had a paper route. I was a paper boy. Interesting. Go ahead.
Hmm.
Great point.
Yeah. What's going on, Nagon?
Hey man, how you guys doing? What's going on, Butterlade,
Doing
Little
good.
Lionel?
What's going on? What's going on?
You been?
Interestingly, in Chicago, my father was coming up, and my father's same age, Dollar Well. Both my parents are. Um,
Hmm.
he was saying that Southside Chicago, there was a transportation service, black owned, down King Drive, like from 35th to 55th, and it was dropping people off up and down King Drive, and that's a an example of a micro transportation. And just to have like a black Chicago, you know, a city within a city. I don't know. Complex design, know what I'm talking about when I talk about Southside Chicago. It's a, a large area, and that's not even counting the south suburbs. That's black also. You got suburbs that's 70, 60, 70, 80% black. And we're not talking about, it's a large area where you can have a major point of, of financial power. We have ports here on the Calumet River. Little reports. If you look up the Illinois port, something, the Illinois International Port, there we have ports here where we can send out goods through. It's it's amazing, but yeah.
Hmm. So, Nagon, you've been listening. What from what you've heard so far? You have any input on what's been said?
Well, as far as enterprise zones are concerned, this is something that's been out for a while. We had enterprise
Hmm.
zones even here in New York. Even when I was deeply involved in politics in my town, getting involved with the city council and all these kind of and in these different areas. Excuse me, in these different political parties and interests, even in New York City and so forth. They were enterprise zones for minority business and so forth. And if you set yourself up as a minority business enterprise MBE, so forth, you set yourself up as a business, they would be funding for you to kind of get started. Some people have taken advantage of it, but that hasn't been taken advantage of nearly as much. There's a lot of paperwork stuff to go through. There's a lot of things you have to do in order to kind of get qualified. But this is something that's been around for a while. It has been underutilized, and it is something that could certainly aid and help in our community. And it has done some good. It has done some good. Um, uh, I think the only issue with some of this has been, and what I've seen over the years, is that you've had minority companies who set up. White companies have helped to set them up. White companies have been the fronts for some of these black companies, and they're the ones who reap a lot of benefits. So that's where I see some of the kind of abuse going on with this. But for real black companies that really want to start black, and be about developing it in your community, um, it's a great. It can be a very powerful tool if utilized properly. This is nothing new. This has been around for a while. Minority business, enterprise zones, they would call them enterprise zones, and that's actually where in Harlem, the Harlem school zone. Really, that was an enterprise zone that actually had gotten some funding from that as well. So this is something that actually can work. It can work if utilized properly. But some of the abuses, as I said, have gone in where black companies have been set up. They get you know co-opted by white companies who say, "Hey, listen, man,
Mhm.
I can pay you this, do this, do this, do this. You guys can be the front guys. We'll run the whole thing from the back. We'll set up as a Mari enterprise." But it's really a kind of a white run business, which is a little bit a little bit. Well, it's kind of business in some ways, but that's where I see some of the abuse. But in the overall enterprise or opportunity zones and so forth, these can be quite beneficial if utilized properly. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, Trump signed the initiative in December, and that the opening image on the site on the channel basically highlights Cory Booker and Republican Tim Scott, Representative Tim Scott. They both co-worked on the Opportunity Zone, and and got it passed with Trump. So there is some, we looked at a map before you came on, but the map is not working right now again for some reason. But the map actually shows that there's a lot of areas that happen to be predominantly black that are identified as these opportunity zones, and is billions of dollars on the table waiting to be utilized for these areas. So when I hear black people on YouTube in the manosphere talk about, let's fix the community, let's do this and let's do that. You have an 8-hour hangout. We could talk about this in the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But a lot of people say, "Well, you guys got to come back in the community, help the community, do something with the community." A lot of people are in the community, can get it done, but they don't. They're waiting for somebody to come in and do it for them. And
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's fair enough for the brothers who are definitely going to get involved and do this and help out and really build profitable businesses. It's definitely a great way to go. But I think those who are going to benefit the most from it are those who also put in most of the work. It can benefit the community, but
Mm-hmm.
it's got to benefit the people who are also starting out with it. And and some people in the community, that are kind of the negative forces that are out there doing a lot of talking. Come in the community, but yet they'll put a gun to your head and so forth, and do kind of crazy shit. You want to avoid you want to avoid them too. So so you have to be kind of
To be honest,
yeah,
that is a legitimate concern.
yeah, yeah,
That is a
yeah.
legitimate concern. You have these people who do come and authentically want to help, authentically want to see their people do good, authentically want to put 101%, 110% into their own community. But you have these knuckleheads out here that will kill them. And the absurdity of that, what, and then the people that are of the ilk that will kill people for making a positive difference, those are the people that are upheld as the guys who will do change. It's a sickening mental. It, and I think a lot of us in the black community need mental health. We actually do. The more and more we talk about this, the more and more things come to light. I, the more I go on the side of we do need some type of mental psychological help if we think this way.
Uh,
Well, I think there's a vested interest in keeping the community in a dysfunctional state, in a very poverty-stricken state, because some people thrive off of the black market, so to speak. So when you start coming up with solutions that's actually going to create an upward mobility and solve certain issues, a lot of these people that we're referring to don't have an interest in seeing this done. They don't want brothers like us coming in there and setting up, wireless internet or any sort of piece of micro infrastructure in place. They have no interest in that. They like the hood the way that the hood is, and they define the hood from of being this sort of toxic wasteland where there's trash everywhere and there's spray paint, there's graffiti, um, there's loud music playing. They're shooting out, the street lamps because they accuse or allege that these street lamps have cameras on them and that they're spying on them. So we're going to shoot the lamps out. So therefore, there's no illumination on your block. So now, people, it's not safe for women to go down the street and things like that. They like that sort of, they thrive in that sort of chaos.
Well, I would say there's a vested interest for some of them to want to keep it that way because, some, and depending on what certain communities there's a certain underbelly or a certain group that kind of benefits from that. Um, you know, some of them benefit from that dysfunction. Now, it's not an overall benefit to the community, but there's some who do. So, those are the kind of the more visual, louder ones, and that's what tends to kind of keep you down. But I think one of the biggest things we do have, one of our biggest problems is how we think. It's our thought process. The biggest issue we have is trying to change how people think to a large extent, and I think that's our biggest challenge because what we have, there are things that are there for us to do the right thing, but it's how we think. It's how we think. I can look at some highly dysfunctional shit that we see going on that people are accepting as all good. Knocked up women still walking around talking crap about the black community, and they're adding to its problems, but yet they're telling you about the black community. Insane. You see others out here who are just going against other brothers who might be looking to work with you, but then they're fighting you and goat ramming you, and then you're wondering why people don't want to have anything to do with you. I mean, just some of the insane mindsets you have going on. These people saying that some of your drug dealers are legitimate business people are not hurting the community. I mean, that they're business people in the community. I mean, you got this kind of and this is coming from people who have maybe some level of education, and and they're saying crazy shit. I mean, we've got a crazy mindset going on. And one of the biggest things we have to do is begin to help to start to change how people think. And I think that really is our biggest issue. More than anything else, it's how we think. And yeah, so I don't know.
You're gonna say something like that?
Oh no, 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 no.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I think that again, that there's great opportunity here. There's billions of dollars on the table that we could be actually taking advantage of. And even from the African standpoint, you see the Africans are moving leaps and bounds just from the articles that we've read. Solar powered, um, assisted water carriers. Um, what else? What else do we cover? Basically, a
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Uber Lyft of tractors.
Yeah,
For
tractor. Yeah.
farmers in Africa. That's impeccable sort of innovation. But we talk about this on the Brain Trust all the time that innovative ideas come from complex conversations. If you're not having complex conversations, nothing innovative is going to come out of that. And when you have people on YouTube who are continuously having weak conversations about very trivial things about who's sleeping with who and who has a wig and whose hair is real and colorism and things of that nature, you're not going to get anything out of that for the most part. And these are the same people who sit up here talking about, well, we're going to fix the community, and let's talk about fixing the community. What about helping the kids, and what about this, and what about that? Well, mentorship has been around the black community for decades, and that's nothing new. So now you have to start really thinking about community from an infrastructure standpoint, from an innovation standpoint. How do you supply wireless internet service to low income areas? You have a library, you have public schools. That's public infrastructure. You
Hmm.
got to leverage the infrastructure to aid the people who pay taxes into it. For the most part, That's a start. That's an infrastructure project, and that's an emerging tech project.
Agreed.
You want to say something, Nagone?
No, 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 no. Go ahead.
When
Okay.
you when you see guys going walking down the street, and you know those
Mhm.
stationary canopies, I think the company's now CC DeVoe is for the bus stop, and
Okay.
the
It's a French
panels are
company.
right. The panels aren't glass. When you see guys
Mhm.
just busting them out, you know that's a problem. You ride down the street, all of a sudden you see blocks on blocks on blocks of these things. The the panels are busted out. Granted,
Mhm.
maybe that company did that knowing that um, those panels will break, so they have to be they the city will pay them to come out and fix them. But I mean, why would you bust these windows out? Why?
Mhm.
You know, come on, man, this is fucking ridiculous.
Mhm. Yeah, they seem to, again, like I was mentioning earlier, because I know what you're talking about. We had the same thing in Boston. You see these glass panes and these stationary alcoves. That's what they call them, alcoves.
Okay.
And they constantly bust them because they like to see, the destruction, the chaos. They drive past it, and there's this sort of sexual gratification of seeing destruction in your neighborhood, and you can't thrive without it. That's why a lot of these guys avoid the suburbs. Suburbs is
Mhm.
a very structured environment. It's clean. You know, people act a certain way. They talk a certain way. What they're trying to do won't be tolerated out there.
You see, you also have to say in the suburbs, like where I am, or a lot of other brothers are. You have you have various kind of like community groups and so forth. That are in effect where and homeowners associations and so forth where you can't really get away with that shit, man. You can't get away with that with that level of fuckery. It's not permitted. You're paying into a to an to an association every month. Like here's $70 a month, and things are kind of taken care of in the hood.
Right.
You
You
don't. you,
you
you,
expect a certain level.
it happens if your grass is not cut.
Hmm.
That's a problem. You can't have the front of your lawn looking like some bullshit. Can't have that going on. I don't care who you are. Black people moving in, you better come in here and have your lawn looking right. Can't have garbage out here. You can't have people riding through the hood, screaming that music out. You know, can't have no, black lip, yellow teeth fucking niggas walking through the joint, acting crazy, talking shit all through the hood, acting like a bunch of savages. Ain't gonna happen. Shit ain't going down. And you have black neighborhoods like this as well that are very careful about how their communities are. They exist in many ways the same way. So you can't come. A lot of communities you can't come and acting out like that. But you can go in certain other areas and act a fool in some of these places, and you can get away with that. But what I'm seeing, especially here in New York, where the crime rates are actually rather low and murder rates are very low. Um, it's not so much a function of these Pookies and Ray Rays that people try to drop everything on. Not that I don't say Pookie and Ray Rays have caused problems. They're certainly not causing a lot of. If they're a big problem in certain communities, if they are, they're not a huge problem here. That's a fact. You got maybe running around, but people are trying to work. But it's really, I think, how people are thinking as far as working more from a synergistic perspective, and
Hmm.
working with the working within the political structure to really try to affect change and work with your economic piece a lot more. That's where I see a lot of problems are, and a lot of that's coming from the lower to middle class community as well. As that starts shrinking way more. So we've got some real issues. that are climb up the ladder from the Pookies and Ray Rays straight into middle America that we have to, middle Black America especially, that we have to really begin to address. And that's where I think a big part of what I call the thinking process is problematic. We have to, it's how we think. We just can't be sitting around, well, I'm trying to just get a job and just work in a job, because sometimes these jobs are not all that. You're gonna have to start thinking a lot more about business and business cooperatives and really working together in that way. And as far as we're coming along, we're not coming along nearly as fast as we need to, and that's my issue with some of this. If you understand where I'm coming from, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. De, what's going on, brother? You have anything you want to add to this?
Going D.
How you guys doing tonight?
What's going on, D?
All right, brother.
I'm good, bro. I, me, I lived in a lot of the big cities across America. I've seen the changes that go on from New York. I used to live in East New York, Brooklyn, Flatbush Avenue. I seen the changes. I see the changes in Chicago when I was there in the 80s, and the University of Chicago bought all the land that the project was around, and they built houses out west, and the people from the project went out there and turned the area into the same thing that projects were. I've seen a little bit of everything here and there. I also lived in a place called Clapham in London, and I seen the same thing happen there. In Paris, I seen the same thing happen there. I don't know what it is that there's a part of it comes from the will to keep the need to keep black people in a state of I don't know, regressiveness. But if we as a people, like you guys were talking about people who will complain about the neighborhood, and they talk about changing, but when somebody comes in that want to make some changes, immediately they'll come down on that person hard, because well, we've been living here all this time, and you want to make these changes, and it's going to adversely affect us. Adversely affect us how? It's going to make the neighborhood better, and they don't want to change it. So, in I'm beginning to think that a lot of us gonna have to. I don't know how to put it. The simple way is like throwing away part of our people going to have to be thrown away, written off, that they cannot be helped and they cannot be saved. That's a bad
They're
attitude to
attacking
have.
us.
There's a bad attitude to have, but that's the way it appears to be going to me.
Yeah,
I mean, go ahead, Mike. I was just gonna say, go ahead.
I was just going to point out that we just got a second thumbs down. I mean that's the level of respect that we have for the topics that we're covering. We're not even talking about anything bad. We're talking about something more positive, and we get two thumbs down.
Yeah, well, you have to expect that. I mean, that's I'm not surprised about that at all. Um, I know you said you have to have some people are just not going to make it. I mean, I agree. What kind of wastelands are we going to further create? Something that we have to think about that too, and the impacts of some of that. But I think we do have some real answers. I mean, there's some real answers out here, and cooperative business is definitely a way that many of us are going to have to start thinking. That could a lot of people who may not be ready to run a business, can certainly can put them to work. From sweeping floors to doing many other things. So I mean, there are a lot of ways that we can skin this cat if we just would just get about it. Get cracking on some of this stuff. And some brothers are, but we certainly need to do that a lot more. The infrastructure, the business infrastructure, is actually there. Mike, would you agree that the infrastructure for this does exist?
The existing infrastructure does exist.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how many neighborhoods across America, in Black neighborhoods, have moved to clean energy platforms. You know, LED lights, solar panel lights, um, solar panels on existing infrastructure that's already there. Um, are we manufacturing? Can we build and manufacture our own solar panels? And can we do it at a cost from a social enterprise standpoint that it allows Black people to take advantage of next generation energy initiatives that are going to lower and reduce the cost of their bills, right? That's where the mindset needs to be, and I don't see many people talking about this, right? So this going to employ a lot of Black men, whether they're coming out of jail or they're already existing, um, setting up training programs inside libraries, the existing public infrastructure again. Um, we need to have a more political delegation as well, so that we can have people who look like us represent our ideas and get them into get them into the right hands, so that this can actually take off and be a complete mission.
Well, a lot of black men, especially, they tend to, especially the younger black men, they tend to want to the least the least they can do to exist. That's what I see them trying to do. And they grew up in households where there's no man to force them to do any better, to change. And they grew up, you know, with mommy hanging at home, sitting down, watching TV all day. They hang in the corner with their friends. If they go to jail, they don't go to jail and say, "Well, let me study some books and all that." I got the time in a different atmosphere. But they come out and go back to where they're doing. And the friends that they have, the people who they call friends, encourage them to come back to what they're doing. You know, it's like um, 3D printing and other technology like that is going to make things easier to start a business later. You're not going to need $100,000 to start a business. A 3D printer is going to allow you to make things, and the printer itself. Uh, a family can get together and buy a printer, or you can save up some money and buy one. I seen one Nigerian guy, no Nigerian guy, Kenyan guy. He had knowledge of how it's done, but he couldn't afford one. Brother made the part. First, he made the part for the printer, and then he turned around and used the printer to start building what he wanted. And we
Mhm.
don't have to start doing that.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, because now you're talking about taking again more public infrastructure and turn it into innovation labs where you can do the 3D printing, you can order it up, you can walk in there and have a 3D printing workshop there where you need something manufactured, you can actually put the order in and pay into it, and it's all within the same neighborhood. You're getting things done immediately and not waiting for some third party from a source that doesn't look like you, um, taking advantage of your dollar, and that way the dollar bounces in your same neighborhood more than once, if not 5 or 6 times, which is what's necessary. I think maybe Nagone could probably speak to this. I think the Jewish dollar in New York probably bounces like a dozen times before it even leaves.
Yeah. That's for sure. To run around New York, that is for sure. Um, and if we could have that just bounce around in our community, because back in some of the older days, we were talking about me and my brother, and we were sitting there, we were talking about old Black Wall Street, and we were looking at Tulsa, Oklahoma, and so forth, and we the dollar went around 90 times in that community before it left.
Yeah.
That's what it did. Around that time, you had your own airports and stuff there. You had aircraft. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, but your dollar flowed around that community around any time before it left. So I mean, we've done all this before. That's why I keep saying people act like, oh, what are the solutions? What we've done it. We've had it going on before. And it's something that we can do again. But I think it's going to come down to maybe it's going to have to come to a point where we're going to have to think that we don't have any other options before we start to really get into this. Maybe we need to come to that point for a lot of us. But the other brothers who are definitely thinking like this and already are making some moves. But yeah, just getting back to the main point about the whole enterprise zone and opportunity zones and so forth, we really are going to have to push a lot more at and really take advantage of it. This is nothing new. I mean, this initiative that Trump and them are coming up with has been around since the '70s. We literally moved to the '80s. It slowed down after more of the Republican administrations had come through and slowed some of this down. But Trump and these guys looking at these cities and maybe saying that maybe this is something that could be a further aid, of which I believe it certainly could. I've decided to get back up on the stick. So this is not a new idea. This is nothing new, but it's certainly something that uh, if taken advantage of, I think it could be very helpful in our community, because the black community in a lot of places are dwindling. Man, these communities are starting to dwindle. They're actually getting smaller. So they're trying to disperse you and move you out. So how are we going to maintain presence in some of these areas? And that means if you're moving you out, your business opportunities are going to evaporate as well. So we have to start thinking more along these lines.
Yeah, I wish Man of Tomorrow was on here because I know he speaks a lot to this idea of land development and things of that nature. Land acquisition, I should say. But to your point, Nagone, definitely a lot of opportunity in these areas. I know has talked about this in the past space and technology hangouts about blockchain and being able to fractionalize property and land through blockchain and cryptocurrencies, and having more democracy over property, and without and reducing gentrification, or the idea of gentrification for that matter. Um, that allows a whole lot of flexible power. Then we have to start talking about creating a new public banking system that takes away power from those private institutions, those multinational institutions that have created these toxic loans to a lot of these black people, people of color, that have decimated lots of earned potential out of these areas. And while the bank got a bailout in 2008, those people who lost their homes did not. People just say, well, that's capitalism, but that's toxic, for the most part. When you sign these people up for deal for loans and instrument products that are destined to fail, I think that that has to be called into question. That we need to have our own public banking structure so that we can start talking about um, going to these banks and actually getting a fair deal, as well as utilizing those public banks to do business with cannabis products and other hemp-based products and things like that that typical banking structures are not allowing us to do business with.
Well, we have our own banks. You know, we do. We were just doing. I'm looking at dealing with a property right now. I have one property that we already have that I'm in the process of developing. Went to a black bank, showed them what we have, and next week, we're gonna go pick up some dough from them, and we'll be able to have
Hmm.
that money back to them very quickly. Um,
I'll
but
be
it's a
right
black,
back.
but it's a but
Yep.
but it's go ahead, but it's a black bank. So we do have that infrastructure is there, man. I'm just saying a lot of stuff we have is there. What we need to do is really start putting the heads together, pen to paper, you know, you know, and get our asses in some seats and really start to really press some of this. And I think that's there's a lack of certain kinds of initiative from a lot of us. I mean, a lot of us are moving quietly. A lot of people don't see it, but they're but we have to press it a little more. We the the opportunities are here. You know, the opportunities are here.
Mm-hmm.
You start developing assets. You go to a black bank that's got good capitalization, and they're gonna put you on. They're gonna put you on. And so
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm dealing with that. Yeah, yes, the bank is Carver Bank, Carver. So I'll call them out. Shout out to Carver. All right.
Yeah,
Shout out.
I do
Yeah.
business. Mhm.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I do business with One United, which is a black bank too. So
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm with Carver. Shout out to my boy Doc, managing director. Doc, what's up, baby? Yeah. So
mhm.
yeah, man. So I'm just keeping it a bug. It's there. I know what's going on. I just see that we just have to get a little bit more push a little harder. We just have to push a little bit harder. But the infrastructure's there. The banks are there. We do have them. It's there. You know, Claude
Yeah.
Anderson and these guys talk about it. You know, we do have an infrastructure. It's not like we don't. It's not like we have to recreate wheels out here. We really
Hmm.
don't have to do that. We just have to push that wheel, turn that wheel a lot stronger. That's what we have to do.
Yeah,
One
and
of
I
the
also
things
think we
that,
need to focus. Go right
go
ahead,
ahead,
De.
go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say that we also have to focus on creating more social equity initiatives.
Yeah.
So more policy development. I'm working on a social equity initiative right now that's kind of centers around the social enterprise opportunity zone discussion. So that's why it wasn't a big deal for me to have this discussion tonight because I've been sitting on this for quite some time. So go right ahead, De.
I was going to say that one of the things that we need to do is like, I don't know, bring in a new generation, like the younger generation who I don't know, from about 12 years old to, I don't know, 21 years old, 23 years old when they get out of college. And you got to try to steer more of these young people into looking at the world as it is, making plans for um, 15, 20 years down the road instead of just saying, well, I want a cell phone tomorrow, I want a car tomorrow, I got to buy a Corvette. I got to get a job, I got to buy a Corvette. The same way you can think about that, you can think about, look, I gotta get a business. I want to create this enterprise that I can sit back and relax when I get to be 50 years old. I can turn it over to my kids. That's what we have to be teaching them. You can't allow the children to be sitting down and waiting for somebody else to do something for them.
Hmm.
We also have to create a legacy of excellence and hand that down. What we've seen, especially in the manosphere on YouTube, is that there's been a legacy of failure of men who are developing in their masculinity. Running around, with all this pent up energy, attacking people on panels. Well, what they're going to do to this person, what they're going to do to that person. Well, at the same time, these guys are always talking about fixing the black community while killing other black people. It's the most obnoxious thing I've ever heard in my life. But this is who it is. This is who we're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if
Facts.
if you're sitting
Meet me at
around
yeah,
all
meet me at the airport.
if you're sitting around all day just thinking about what you're
Oh.
gonna say on if you're sitting around all day, you're home and you're sitting at home all day long just thinking about yeah, these women doing this, these women are doing that. What are you doing? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You can go on a panel and you can talk about what the women doing for 8 hours or 10 hours. I see people start panels at 9 o'clock in the morning and at 11 o'clock it's still going. and you're talking all the time about what women are doing, you know, and how drugs and this and all that. You're talking about it, but you're not making any headway in fixing those problems you're talking about. You already know that the women are doing this foolishness. Leave the foolish woman alone, and you know what? Give her the house, man. I did that. I mean, one day I just picked up my clothes. You know, here are the keys to the house. It's yours. I am not coming back. The house is yours. Here's half of my 401k. It's yours. I'm not coming back. I went off and leave and start out over again. You know, you have to do that sometimes. And these guys don't want to do it. They just want to sit down and talk. And talking is only going to get you a problem in about 2 or 3 years when this economy is gone to, hell. What are these guys going to be doing?
Mhm. The right people are not on the panels having the discussions, and that's part of the issue. We can't move the ball forward because the wrong people are have the loudest voices in the room. And unfortunately, we are outnumbered as productive people, as productive black men and productive black women. We're outnumbered by these unproductive people who are, for the most part, are convicted felons. You got convicted felons on people's panels who sold drugs in the black community to poison other people, and saying that I don't consider him to be a criminal. I consider him to be a street entrepreneur. I mean, this is the rhetoric that is being pushed in the manosphere that criminals are the new heroes of the community, and gangbangers are the heroes of the community, and that you educated lames, you sit on your hangout with your dockets and things of that nature, and you talk about space and technology. That's guff.
It's once again it's a changing of how people think. That's the real fight, for us really here. It's just a changing of some of this mindset of how we think. I see some women, here they are, becoming, you want to talk about women who are getting ready to be baby mamas, and they're
Hmm.
talking about what are you doing for the black community? And here they are getting ready to drop babies, single mama, baby mama. One of the worst statistics that we've had. We know what this has done for our community on the whole. They're adding to the problem, but yet are questioning you about what are you doing for the community. You gotta sit down and think and look at some of this. That's what I'm saying. We need to change kind of how we're thinking, and we got to look at, you know, how we gonna work to be our best selves, and bettering yourself. You're gonna help to better the community, man. I tell you that. So we have to think a certain type of way, and that's the key here. I look
Hmm.
at other ethnic groups that do well. They think a certain way. They
Hmm.
just think a certain way. I was watching something very interesting. This was kind of funny. I was watching, and I don't want to, move away from this conversation much because hopefully this jibes in some way. They were talking about how the Italian gangsters and all them tried to take over the casinos, but they only got a hold really of the labor, but who really controlled the casinos were the Jews, and they were like, well, the Jews took it over. Well, how did the Jews take it over? Well, they said that the difference between the Jewish guys and the Italian guys were, Italian guy got $1 million. He's going to bury it he's going to bury it underneath he's going to bury it underneath the floor in his basement. He's going to keep it there. He's not even going to spend it. They said, well, the Jews got $1 million. They didn't bury it. They took that and further invested it into other interests, and they got the upper hand on buying more and more and more land because they invested that money into these enterprises more, and that's how they were able to take over and ultimately run these things as opposed to just being a part of helping to deal with the labor, which was important as well. But they ran a lot of these casinos, and they grab the biggest lion's share of the money because they owned them. They owned them because they invested their money into it. It was how they thought, how they outmaneuvered another group that was trying to really get involved in it and take over an industry. The Jews got the upper hand because they were the ones who invested their money a certain way. It's how they thought, and I'm and that's one area of business. But here we're now looking at legitimate business and how to really, and we see the casinos that they're running. They're still running these to this day. Um, but how how black people, how do we think, and how are we going to get into serious different areas and be prevalent? It's how we think. Some of the mindset of the drug dealer as your businessman in the community. He's been a derelict failure. The single mom and this person, these people talking about build a community, and they're dropping babies without really good fathers and good family structures. These are derelict people. You know,
Hmm.
with a with a in my view a derelict voice, keeping you off your game. And it's how we're thinking. It's what has to change. And I'm going to just leave that alone. But that's all I have to say on that. Hopefully, you guys understand my point.
I understand you.
Yeah, I get your point.
We tend to, uh, I, even if you're a drug dealer, suppose you say, you know what, I don't have a job, so let me sell this, bag of marijuana, and make some money. So you do that. If you're making 1,000 a week, you should have some kind of laundromat somewhere outside your neighborhood in another neighborhood. With that, from that laundromat, you start building out. You start putting your money into business and hiding your money. That's how people with sense do it. You don't go into the local club and make it rain. The most expensive bottle of champagne, the most expensive car. Now everybody in the neighborhood is looking at you as the Don, but really you don't have anything. You just have this image, and everybody in the neighborhood want to imitate your image. And that's what the problem. That's the trap that we fell into with. And it started with the Mac movies from the 70s. When I saw the Mac movies coming out, I saw the same thing happen to the rap music, gangster rap.
Hmm.
It tore apart the thinking. Because before in the 50s, 60s, there were guys who used to sell drugs too. But a lot of black people put their money into businesses. They didn't just they had good cars, they had a good house. They invested their money. The children went to colleges. They were there too, but it wasn't the same way after the 70s. It changed.
I mean, how long have you been in this country? Just a question.
Set from 70.
From 1970.
Yeah.
And you were in England before, or
I went to England. I spent some time in England. Came back to US. I went. My brother, I have traveled. The three places I haven't gone yet. I haven't gone to Russia. I haven't gone to Australia.
yeah, I've been to Russia. I haven't been to Australia, but I've been to Russia.
I haven't gone to Russia, and Australia, and New Zealand. I
But
haven't gone to. I haven't seen a lot of China either, but you know.
yeah, I mean, there are a lot of places we should see, but I'm just looking at a lot of what we've got going on, the structure our business structure, how we think about business in our community. Um, we have some who are really on top of it, who are on their game, but not enough. We have to really think, and we've got some former Pookies and Ray Rays who were in that life, and they've gotten out. They've had some money. They've gotten out of jail, and now they're investing their money properly. They're developing real estate, and then they're doing some good. You got some of these people who are actually doing quite a bit of good, and some of these other ex gang leaders who like I saw in Chicago where they had that Project Ceasefire, where some of these guys, instead of being a bunch of black lit, yellow tooth shit talkers, they they and henny drinkers and all, they got out of that gang life, and then they engaged with the gangsters and engaged with the youth, and helped to bring about some peace, and helped to as the projects were funded, it really helped to reduce some of these crime levels. These are the kind of people we need to work with more, identify and kind of work with these people, because I think they have a lot to offer, and boy, they were very effective in so many ways. Even though the funding got cut, even though they tried to self fund for a while. What I found very interesting, when Project Ceasefire got funding got seized, they started to self fund for a while, and then they had a problem self funding. So black people who talk so much about the gang problem and so forth weren't willing to help to fund these programs themselves to stop this from happening. So it's really how we think. It's really how we think. And then of course, then Trump and them came in and, well, we're going to cut the funding, but now we want to bring in troops, which I found, okay. So we saw something that was working. You want to cut that off, but now you want to cut the funding and then bring troops in. Okay, yeah.
You don't have to bring in troops. They already trained every police department in the country.
Well, I'm just talking
military unit.
I'm just talking about the fuck. I'm just talking about the overall. I'm just talking about the overall fuckery of what's going on, and how black people we have to respond to some of this. So, and we can deal with this. We can deal with these issues ourselves, but we have to. We really have to press a lot more and talk a lot more about it. And I think part of this manosphere, if you will, if we're gonna, I understand that a lot of manosphere is about entertainment and entertaining people and so forth. I get it. I understand it. I understand the super chats and all the stuff going on, and the Patreons and all that. I understand it all. I understand the money that's gotten in here. People are jobbing out of this. But I think channels like this have to really be responsible and speak some truth to what's really going on here. And I just want to bring that up as well. Go ahead.
Sorry, when I came into the manosphere, it appears that wow, brothers have started to talk about things that they never could talk about before. And I started giving a lot of support to as many people as I can. Now I see that it's not changing. Two years down the road, 2.5 years down the road, and I see the people talking about the same thing. And it's not improving. Now you got women coming into this manosphere. It's not just the brothers are talking about. They got the women. The women are coming in, and the women are pushing the narrative. I don't know if you guys watch this, but the women are pushing the narrative. The men are going on the women's channels now to talk about it. Instead of making the women say, you know what, we don't want to talk to you. If you come here, we're going to talk to each other.
The women have been invited in.
What we have to say, and that's it.
The women have been invited in. The women have been invited in. It's not like they bum rushed the show. They have been invited in willingly to come in here and do what's going on, and that's what you're dealing with. So,
well, they're pushing the narrative now, not the men. The men are just reacting from what I'm seeing.
Good evening, gentlemen.
So
what's going on, Complex?
The subject tonight about cooperative businesses. I mean, that should be what we should have moved from the stupidity that women are doing into. We got to take our sons. We got to start our own cooperatives. We got to start doing our own business. We got to push our sons into following in our footsteps. Leave the women behind. And if the women want to change, they follow us. If they don't want to change, hell with you. This is where we should be tonight. Is where all the men should be saying, like, okay, how do we form so and so? We can put some money together. It doesn't have to be everybody put, I don't know, $100, and the situation is, you know what? We're gonna buy I don't know, a few computers, hand them out to little kids. The kids will come into we have a YouTube channel. The kids come in there. They learn how to trade stock. They learn how to write code. That's what we should be doing right now as men. That's where this community business thing should be headed. That's my opinion.
Complex, you have anything you want to add to this from what you've heard from the beginning of the hangout or any point?
Oh, I mean, I've been in and out, man, because my she had a tea party today. So I've been listening and then I had to put the phone down and do that. So I came back in, I was listening to like the last 10 minutes or so. And, I just wanted to touch on what DE and Nagone were just talking about with regard, and sorry, you guys, my allergies are on fleek right now. But the whole thing about like the women coming into the manosphere and the kind of like the stagnation of the discussions that are being had. What I ultimately understand and realize is that there's only a certain sect of men who are self-starters. Okay, so that means that the only validation that you require to get out and do something and achieve something is basically your own desire to do it. Okay, and that's like a small set of men. That's only a small percentage, a small group. And then you have the larger percentage of men who would come behind, who would do something, but they're going to do something with women serving as the impetus to do so. So that means that, they have to kind of puff their chest out and fluff their feathers. And when she nods her head in approval, then they'll go about doing it. But until she does that, they won't actually do shit. And then there's just the group of dudes who ain't gonna do shit, just regardless as to who or what. So I think that brothers like us have to understand like that we fall in that group of self-starters. So, with that being said, it's anything that we create, anything that we have a thought to create, we have to go ahead and create it and execute it because the objective is one of a noble nature. And it's not something that's done in hopes of being validated by the opposite sex.
Now, do you have anything you want to add to the immediate discussion tonight about opportunity zones and social enterprises, social entrepreneurship, how that can be benefited in black communities or black people, things that you may have heard?
Yeah, no, I mean, okay, so with regards to that, I mean, because that falls in line with what I was just saying. It's not necessarily looking at the community to validate what it is that you see as a need that needs to be filled or a solution that needs to be applied to a problem. And if a social enterprise or social entrepreneurship, if these types of platforms are what are going to enable you to basically like achieve a goal or complete a task or provide a solution to a problem that plagues the community, then that has to be the method upon which you seek to get that solution to the problem deployed. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, man. I actually, call it egotistical or not, but I view myself as an industrialist. So anytime that I'm thinking about business, I'm always thinking about others. I'm always thinking about being an access point, being someone that not only is just asking you to buy something from me, but if you want a business, then let's see how we can partner so that we can kind of expand what we're doing here. Because, when you have expansion, then there's more people that can get involved with what you're doing. So, but again, I mean, if you're thinking that way, then it's all about being a self-starter and leveraging whatever opportunities are available, whether it's private capital, whether it's social entrepreneurship, whether it's whatever platform it is, whatever it is, you can't kind of look for the validation of others to do it. You have to just basically act on impetus.
So this Trump initiative for opportunity zones is talking about doling out billions of dollars. We put up a map earlier
Yeah, I
with
saw I
different
saw the
funds.
map. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities on the West Coast for this. SoCal seems to be very populated too. So not
Hmm.
sure if you know anything about opportunity zones happening in Cali or SoCal for that matter.
No, I mean, I'm gonna have to look into that. I'm largely kind of plugged into, the main industries that, Noah and myself deal with. So if there's relatable opportunity zones and stuff like that, I'll definitely look into it. But just from an overall, no, no, no. I'm not really up on all that's available here in SoCal. So that's something I need to actually look into.
Mhm. Yeah. So my takeaways before we close out is basically I think one of the things we need to focus on is the AAIB, African American Investment Banking.
Hmm.
That can be done. That can just be an app. It doesn't have to be a brick and mortar. We can use that to crowdfund, a lot of the initiatives. We read an article last night on the economics hangout where he talked about a black woman talked about not being able to get any investment into her startup.
That was the one about it was kind of like the feminine products or something that kind of has to do with women on their cycle. I was listening in yesterday on that one as well. That's the one you're speaking to?
Yes, yes, and she talked about how much of a struggle it is, and things of that nature. A lot of this stuff can easily be resolved if people are willing to have a dialogue. And unfortunately, in the manosphere in Black YouTube, you're not really going to have that dialogue. I haven't heard it. I've been around YouTube for quite some time, and I'm not hearing any sort of discussions come from these so-called alpha males. With gold teeth in their mouth, banging their chest, every single day. Um, Hulk smash and Hulk smash. But again,
Right.
AAIB, African American Investment Banking, leveraging that for complex. You have a lot of feedback. Um,
Okay.
Leveraging that for crowdfunding. We also need a social enterprise council, a Black social enterprise council, and what that's going to do is allow some experienced people and who have been involved in entrepreneurship as well as corporate businesses to kind of use that as a council to guide those coming into the business, leveraging our public infrastructure in predominantly Black neighborhoods, such as your public library and your elementary schools, your high schools, your middle schools, leveraging those places. Between the times of 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. as learning centers for adults, for continuing education, uh, and creating platforms for nano degrees based on artificial intelligence, coding, um, robotics, self-driving cars, autonomous vehicles, things of that nature, drones,
Definitely cryptos
and
as well.
that falls in line with financial literacy, right? So
Yeah. Yep.
buying fractional space for 5G from the federal government that's on the
Hmm.
auction block. Just a lot of feedback coming for you, Ulysses.
Shit, man. It is okay.
Leveraging, the public infrastructure and buying, that 5G on the auction block and utilizing that for public infrastructure so that we can provide cost-effective wireless internet service and wireless phone service for our people so that we don't have to actually be beholden to T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint. Those 2-year, 5-year contracts where you're paying $1 million for a phone that's already obsolete. That does not make any sense. We should be able to manufacture our own unlocked Android-based phones with custom software, custom ROMs to it, or even just the base ROM. You can do a lot of this stuff in China. A lot of that stuff can be manufactured in China. We covered that on one of our previous hangouts. a turnkey Android phone kit is anywhere between 100 and 150 bucks, and it's comparable to any sort of iPhone or Galaxy Samsung based phone. There's a whole lot of opportunity that can come out of this. Micro transportation, scooters, bikes, um, ride sharing programs, mini buses and shuttles and things of that nature. Ulysses, you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say that, Mike, because in all truthfulness, man, everything that you just mentioned, like there's brothers in the brain trust that are already knee deep in all of what you just said.
Yep.
That's the crazy part about it, is that we ain't just blowing smoke, talking out the side of our mouths or no shit like that when we talk about these things. And so everything that you just mentioned, like I don't even want to go into some of the business stuff that Noah and I have engaged in Africa, but it's centered right around what you just talked about. So I already know right offhand how easy it is to go get some custom phones made. And it's just like what
Right.
you said. The issue is that okay, you get the phones, then what? You got to have a larger view of what you would be deploying this technology to do. You don't get phones done just to say, oh, I got my own phone. No, like, well, okay, is there a marketing angle to the phone? Is it preloaded with apps that are going to support a digital business infrastructure that's largely centered around a specific group of people or something like that? I mean, all of pondering these questions those are going to be the things that will help you start to round out a business plan that you have to build some longevity into. Just producing a phone on its own, that's great. Now that's another phone on the market for it to compete with everyone else. But like you just said, like if that phone is being preloaded with if the Android distro that gets preloaded onto that phone has preloaded custom apps, right? That are done by app developers that are in this collective or something like that. Okay, well now you're talking about entering into the tech market full on with not only a hardware, device wise, but software as well. And then you add to that on what you just talked about, getting a slice of that 5G pie, or hell, even what we discussed some time back, just buying white space altogether, for
Right.
other ventures. But you know, it's there, it's on the table, and it's not as if again we're not blowing smoke or nothing. Brothers that are over here at the Brain Trust, and I'm putting this on the record. Brothers that are over here on the Brain Trust are actively involved in all of these things, all of these venues and technologies as we speak. And there's a reason why we speak to it the way we speak about it. And that's because we are involved in it, and we understand that
Is Complex there?
No, I think he just dropped out. I think he might be on a mobile handset.
Hmm.
Yeah. So to Complex's point, 5G white spaces are up for auction. I know there's a lot of debate about whether or not 5G is going to fire your brain or something like that because of the microwave power that it puts out. But the initial point is to actually carve out a piece of that space so that you can actually create your own network, make it publicly available in that predominantly black area that can cover that area and create your own handsets and create your own tablets and have people who are already learning to code, these Zennials who are coming out, they can start writing apps. You're talking about building a whole new economy based on the fourth industrial complex.
Yeah,
And,
I
and
mean,
absolutely.
and that's where our mindset is. This is, I mean, this is something that has to be discussed first in order for it to come to fruition. We talked about this many times, but innovative ideas come from complex conversations. This is a complex conversation.
yeah, that's very true. But like I said, the big complaint has been the issues with 5G and how they feel it will greatly affect your health. But as far as white spaces are concerned, and getting in on this bandwidth or any other, let's be honest, any other bandwidth that could really, that could benefit us is within our interest. Definitely so. Definitely, we need to be on this. Now, I am understanding that there are some black companies that are trying to take advantage of this. Mike, would you be able to expand on that a little bit?
Take advantage of what exactly?
As far as getting in on these white spaces and developing products. Um,
Yeah, yeah. I can't think of the names of them right now, but there are a couple of companies or a couple of black startups that are involved in the the emerging of these markets. So it's a very small fraction, but um, it's not something that's impossible to get involved with. So that's the reason why it's brought up, right? But the ability, we have to start thinking about healthcare.
yeah,
Healthcare as expensive
absolutely.
as it is. Um, how do you make healthcare as portable as your mobile phone? How do you make it so that in the same way you order a pizza from Domino's Pizza from an app perspective, how do you order healthcare from a triage standpoint, right? How do you leverage the cloud computing aspect? How do you leverage artificial intelligence? How do you leverage um, a public health initiative, working with the federal institutions to make sure that you get the assistance necessary to aid your area best way possible.
Telemedicine,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Telemedicine is
Yep.
where it's all going to go. So if we go with just the concept of telemedicine in mind, and we start there, then that means that from that standpoint, we're looking at an app on your phone that will accommodate any number of medical based inquiries, examinations or appointments with doctors, stuff like that. Creating your own physicians networks, you know,
Yeah. I'm thinking about
I
how
mean
many
that's
Africans are. Yeah, think about how many Africans are already doctors, right? I mean, they make up the large majority of black doctors in America. They come from Africa, they come from the Caribbean, and they enroll in the PhD programs. Well, how do we get their services loaded into an app, and how do we get them to drive a vehicle to your house? When you come into that vehicle, you get checked out, and then you sign on an iPad or something like that, or on your phone, and they get paid whatever it is that they're going to charge you, and then they go. You never even have to leave your house, so to speak. So that's the sort of innovative ideas that have to come out of these opportunity zones and these social enterprises that we're talking about here.
I mean, even things like, when you're writing apps, like let's just say for diagnostic purposes, right? So if you're trying to get a diagnosis, using the infrared camera on your phone to take a picture of like a rash, for example, on an arm or some kind of lesion or something like that. And the infrared camera will take a picture of the a number of layers of skin, and will give the doctor a view of like what kind of inflammation, the type of inflammation that's there. I'm kind of just kind of browsing around doing my own, like, nerding out on a lot of this stuff. And a lot of these technologies, man, that are out there that could be used for like self-diagnostic purposes and stuff like that. I mean, it's absolutely amazing that what some of this stuff can do. Literally just utilizing the infrared camera on your phone. If you tap into that, we use our cameras and it's just like a regular, megapixel, just like a regular camera. But if you're writing an app to utilize the infrared feature, then there's other things that you can gain from imaging, based on your phone. And all of these phones, even like, the cheaper end of the scale, all have cameras that have the ability to do this. So it's
You
it's
need at
really
least
just. Go ahead, Mike.
no, you need a bare minimum of 5 plus megapixels of a camera image quality wise. So most of your
Right.
moderately priced phones actually have anywhere between 15 to 20 megapixels. I think the new Samsung Galaxy Note is proposed to have a 30 megapixel phone, 30 megapixel camera on it. So now we're talking about moonshots. We're talking about zooming in
More
and
than
being
enough.
able to see the craters on
Right.
the moon.
Yep. I was gonna say that's more than enough to zoom in on your skin if you can see the damn craters on the moon.
Yep.
One question I had, that if we started a fractional banking,
Yep.
what I mean by fractional banking, if say somebody proposed a bank where um, I contribute $100 and another 1,000 black men contribute $100. If you can contribute how much you want to, but I'm just using the round number. And then that bank invests in projects throughout the community. It doesn't matter where. It could be New York, it could be LA, Miami. That is going to benefit. It might start out there, but it's going to be when it starts to grow in LA. They grow it in LA, then they come to New York and they grow one in New York, and they bring every black community throughout the country that we're bringing business into because of this. That's what we need, and this community, that I've been thinking about doing something like that for myself, but not here because here for me to do it alone would be too expensive. If I do it outside the
It needs to be
country,
it needs to be multinational, DE. It needs to be multinational because now you're talking about going into Africa or going to Africa, going into Latin America, and funding operations that are committed to social justice as well, right? To social impact as well.
right,
We covered an article earlier in the Hangout where they had these drop modules in storage containers that had batteries and solar panels connected to it and provided power at pennies on the dollar compared to the $800, $1,000 it would take to connect them to a grid. That's innovative ideas.
So it's
So we have to
like a
think in the
portable
same
power
exact way.
like a portable power wall.
Yes, basically, they bring it on the back of a truck and they just drop it off in a few minutes, and then you have you connect your house to that grid. It's a microgrid.
Wow. Okay.
I had this idea before, and I tried to I wanted to wait to talk about it, but I see that people are already on top of that, on top of the game as well. So, some of the guys that I've been talking to in Africa have been having the same exact conversations, and they're talking about the same exact infrastructure development. So when people talk about building up a black community or building up any community, infrastructure is key. That's a piece of infrastructure, even at the micro scale.
Right, right. And to kind of touch on what Dee was talking about, man, I mean, we would have to go back, shit. I think, man, it's like maybe in the 40s or the 50s, where I think we talked about different types of banking solutions. I think one of the ones we discussed was like susu banking, all these different types of like fractionalized uh, capital investment models and stuff like that. We've also discussed fractionalization as it relates to cryptocurrencies. So, I mean, we've had plenty of discussion on this stuff, and there's plenty of banking models that follow the line of logic that Dee, what you were just talking about. And it's funny because other groups of people that are here in this country actually use that. They use that as funding sources for businesses to get businesses in their local communities to get funding for them. So everybody's putting in a certain amount, and then this person's going to go and start a business. So then they take a certain portion out of that pool, and then they get that business up and going, and then everybody in the community goes and gets this service or this product or whatever from that business, and then that business pays back into it, and then people are contributing to that pool, and then the next business springs up, and in a short amount of time, you've got you something. You've got you something going on. It's only us. It's only us who can't seem to to commit to implementing something like that, because we feel as though is that we feel it. You know what? I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna go there.
Look, bro, let me tell you something. I don't get involved in this manosphere women thing because my experience. I started out a business, and the woman I was married to went and got her friend that was married to come and get me to quit what I was doing and come and work for her. That's the kind of position that we as black men are in, and we have to kind of like force ourselves and take our children out of this uh, position that they're in right now. That us are and them. Otherwise, they're gonna follow us into the same thing that we have to start building. And the time for you can have a conversation, and at the end of that conversation, you start making a plan. And that's the thing that we have to start doing right now. We gotta start coming up with plans because the world is not waiting for us. We gotta get ahead of them because otherwise, the steps that we are taking, the steps that they are taking, are gonna leave us behind, and we're gonna be still trying to catch up.
That sounds like an excellent note to close out on. So thank you all for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow for the cannabis discussion, right? Complex.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Good night, everybody.